welcome back to Spring into Math 7. I'm Mrs. Campbell. Today we're going to be talking about histograms. Let's get started. All right, we're going to learn a new way to display data. So let's start by talking about what is a frequency table, and they're really important. We have to have them when we're doing histograms. So you might want to write this in your math journal. A frequency table depicts the number of times a data value occurs. It's created by making a table with three separate columns. Column 1 is designed for intervals, and the range of each interval is determined by the range in data values. If the range in data values is not very great, the intervals are going to be small, but if the range in the data values is great, the intervals are going to be larger. So it's important that the intervals are of equal size and do not overlap. In column 2, this is easy. You probably learned how to do this when you were quite little. Column 2 is for tallied results, just tally marks basically. And this is where you tally the number of times you see a data value from each interval. And column 3 is where we add the tally marks to determine the frequency results. So let's look at an example. 20 people were asked to state the number of hours they sleep each night. The results of the survey are listed below. Create a frequency table to display the data. So those are the number of hours. So person 1 said 7 hours, person 2 said 8, person 3 said 6, person 4 said 9, 10, 12, etc., etc. So step 1 is to make a table with 3 separate columns. That's pretty easy. You're going to label one intervals, then tallied results, and then frequency results. And in this case, there's not too wide a range in data values. So the intervals are going to be displayed by ones. It'll make more sense when you see it completed. And then step 2 is looking at the data, tally the number of times a data value occurs. Okay, so step 3 would be then to add the tally marks to record the frequency. So looking at 5, the number of hours slept being 5. How many people said they slept 5 hours? 1. So you put 1 tally mark under tally, and then you just count the tally marks and put that number in the frequency column. So 1 person slept for 5 hours, tally once, frequency put a 1. Look at the next one, number of hours slept 6. The number 6 pops up 2 times in that set. So we're going to put 2 tally marks. We count up our tally marks, 2. That's pretty simple. Same thing with 7 all the way up through 12. Let's look at another example. The data below depicts the amount of time in minutes 20 middle school students spent on the computer each day. Arrange the table on the information on a frequency table. 10, 32, 8, etc., etc. So step 1 would be to make a table with 3 separate columns. 1, intervals, 2, tallied results, and 3, frequency results, like we did on the last one about sleep. In this case, there's a moderate range in data values, so the intervals, we're going to display them in 5s, and that'll make sense when you see it on the next slide. Step 2, looking at the data, tally the number of times the data value occurs. Okay, and then step 3 is add the tally marks to record the frequency. So that there you can see the intervals 0 to 5, number of minutes on the computer. How many people were on the computer from 0 to 5 minutes? We tally 3 and we put a 3. How many people were on the computer for 6 to 10? 2, so we tally 2 and we write a 2. Same thing 11 through 15. That gives you a better idea of what I meant by interval. And the tally marks, I'm reading what's written in blue there, in the frequency table can really give you a clear picture of the data. Let me give you an example of what I mean by that. In red it says how many students spent 51 to 55 minutes on the computer. So all you would do is go down, look at the interval column for 51 to 55, go across, you see 1 tally mark, 1 person. How many students spent 0 to 5 minutes on the computer? You see 3 tally marks and 3 in frequency. It's very, very easy to read doing it this way. All right, now we're ready for our next step. Once you've created a frequency table, you can make a histogram to present a visual display of the information in a frequency table. So let's talk about what is a histogram. And again, this is something you might want to write down. A histogram shows the frequency of data values on a graph. Like a frequency table, data is grouped in intervals of equal size that do not overlap. Like a bar graph, the height of each bar depicts the frequency of the data values. A histogram differs from a bar graph in that vertical columns are drawn with no space in between them, and you'll see an example of that in a second. So let's create a histogram from a frequency table. Here's our frequency table. The example says create a histogram using the results on the frequency table below. Again, we have the number of hours slept each night, 5 through 12 with our tally marks, and then the frequency. So to create a histogram, you are going to draw a horizontal and vertical axis, or horizontal axis and a vertical axis, so an X and a Y. You can see in the white right there. Give the graph the title, hours slept each night. That's pretty easy. 3, label the horizontal axis hours, and then list the intervals across the horizontal axis, and then you're going to label the vertical axis, or Y, frequency. Since the range in frequencies is not that great, we can label the axis by halves. Okay, so for each interval on the horizontal axis, draw a vertical column to the appropriate frequency value. On a histogram, like I said before, there's no space in between the vertical columns. And if you need to pause your video there to take a closer look at this histogram, feel free. So sometimes you'll be given a set of data that you'll need to organize, and the data will be unorganized. And so to work with it, you'll have to organize it by creating a frequency table. Then you can use that frequency table to create a histogram. So let's look at another example. 15 people were asked to state the number of hours they exercise in a 7-day period. The results of the survey are listed below. Make a frequency table and histogram to display the data. If you want to give this a try, feel free. Pause your video, write these numbers down, and see if you can do it. Good luck. So first of all, what we need to do is arrange the data on a frequency table. Recall that a table with 3 columns needs to be drawn, one for intervals, one for tallied results, and one for frequency results. And the range in values for this set of data is 11. Therefore, data will be tallied in intervals of 3. Okay, so next, the data needs to be displayed on a histogram. You're going to draw a horizontal X axis and a vertical Y axis. List the intervals across the horizontal axis. You're going to name that axis hours of exercise. You're going to label the vertical axis by ones, and you're going to title the vertical axis frequency. For each set of intervals, you're going to draw vertical columns at the appropriate frequency and color in the vertical columns, and ensure that no space is between. Title the graph, hours of exercise. So looking at our histogram, what conclusions can we draw? Let's read what it says here. Looking at the histogram above, you can see that equal numbers of people reported that they exercised between 6 and 8 and 9 and 11 hours each week. 2 people stated that they exercised between 3 and 5 hours per week. 2 people reported that they exercise between 12 and 14 hours per week. 0 to 2 is the interval with the least frequency. That just about does it for histograms. I hope you've enjoyed it. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.